A great episode here. Episode 42, Choose Your Destiny. And super excited to have Josh aboard. I met Josh probably about 2 months ago, and I met him on another podcast. He was actually the interviewer and filled in for someone. And one of the reasons why we reached out to him is many of you know my story, but I came from the ashes, and I was able to really deconstruct and reconstruct a new person. And I haven't met another man other than myself, and maybe one or two other people that I know that have gone through a journey to where they're on the other side. They have this redemption. They've had these demons, and one of those demons has been alcohol. And so when we were on this phone call, I'm going on sober 2.5 years. Josh had mentioned that he was sober, and some of the notes that we had is I was drinking a fifth of vodka every couple of days. He was drinking a fifth every day. And so that really piqued my interest. And so when Albert and I interviewed him, we just thought that there was a phenomenal story about how he overcame, and we came up with the title "Choose Your Destiny" for a lot of different reasons, and we'll dive in it. But just super honored, bro. Thank you for taking the time to be on, and can't wait to dive in a little bit more.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to kind of share my story and talk about it, and be a little vulnerable today.
Yeah, well, thank you, Josh. So whenever we have someone on, I don't know, we just kind of like to dive deep into this. How are you feeling about wanting to share your story tonight? What is kind of coming up for you and for someone that would want to share their story at all? Like, is this like the first time for you? It sounds like you do a lot of speaking and stuff like that. Like, how are you feeling today?
Yeah, no, I do some speaking and share quite a bit. I think as your dad said here, it's like not a lot of people come out the other side, right? And even myself personally, there's been a lot of people lost along the way, right? And so I think it's just important to share for those of us who have been able to make it to the other side of an addiction journey or alcoholism or some of the other deeper issues that are seated within us as men today, that getting out there and talking about it is just as important to help more people get to the other side, right? So although I'm pretty comfortable talking about it, there's still that little the little bitch voice talking about, like, being a little embarrassed maybe at some of the things that have taken place in my life, and that almost that I should be more than what I am. But I think that some of that comes from those deeper unhealthy things that really caused the problem in the first place, especially with alcohol, right? Like feeling like I need to be more, feeling like I got to accomplish more, do more all the time is really like a big piece of why I think people get caught in, alcoholism in particular.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. For me, one of the things I had to come to grips with is I kept validating my behavior. I kept validating my behavior by how I grew up, what my mom did, what my dad did, my ethnicity, everything except the one individual that I needed to point at, and that was me.
Yeah.
And so for you, kind of give us a little bit of kind of synopsis, break it down like in Cliff Notes versions of the Josh that is now, how he became this person now, but where did it stem from when you were struggling and you decided that alcohol was your vice of choice? Give us a little bit of background on that journey you went through, and then we'll poke some holes here and there as we go.
Man, and so some of it is, being the cool guy in high school, right? And like fitting in with the crowd that was doing all the things to party, and then even further into my early 20s and stuff, I was in the music scene. And so, doing that professionally brings a lot of alcohol around, spending a lot of time at a bar, and really never coming from a place of discipline with that, right? Or quite frankly, very much of anything, um, from the way that I was growing up and just traveling around, and half of it being in a single parent household, right, with my mom. And so I, I, I used it as a way to cope a lot of times with that inadequacy feeling I was just talking about, right? Because that same inadequacy feeling of wanting to be a cool kid in the cool group is the same as, you know, wanting to be one of the guys drinking backstage is the same as wanting to, you know, fit in with the crowd. But at some point, there's this tipping that becomes wanting to suppress a feeling, right? And wanting to control something within yourself by taking a substance or drinking, right? And man, once you get there, it's a slippery slope, you know, because the more things, and this is what I found in my experience, is like the more things and the more responsibilities that I stacked onto me that I had to quote unquote drink away, right, is the worse it got. And that's how, as you pointed out when we first met and we were talking about it, that's how I got to a bottle of whiskey a day. And it was like, you got to understand, I was running, and then this just a couple of years ago, I was running 4 different businesses. One of them was a startup. I had $175,000 invested in. I got, 6 employees at the time. I run an expedite brokerage company, so I got shit going everywhere, literally all over the country, at all hours of the day and night, and tracking all this stuff. And it's just a lot. So it was my escape in a lot of ways from that responsibility, and a way to hide ultimately. And I think going back to what your son's saying here, it's like the way to fix the hiding problem to bring it out in the open, right? And so I think this is so important today, and also that I think we all got our moments of shame that we want to hide in, right? But better ways than drinking a bottle of whiskey a day, I assure you. That's coming from the voice of experience.
Right. Thanks. Appreciate that.
That's hard to admit, It's the shame piece is so fascinating. Me and my dad always talk about this just because, it can spiral so much inside and, fester inside of you. So for someone to have so much responsibility at that point in time, for someone to feel like they, have a lot on their shoulders, it's easy to hide away in the bottle, and just get away from what is reality. So at what point when did you know that that wasn't the way that you needed to live anymore? How do you finally face that?
Well, unfortunately, I think there's a difference between the moment you know and the moment you do something about it. And so, I mean, I could pick out half a dozen moments I know, right? Like looking at probably more than that, but looking at the bottom of an empty bottle at 12:30, stressed the fuck out, 100 pounds overweight, sitting in my garage that I felt like was the only part of my house that I had of my own, right? And having been gone for a week and just working all the time and really just having this feeling at one particular point of being completely disconnected from the people I cared about the most, right? And so I think there's a lot of moments like that where but I think the most important moment is when you either things get so bad or you come to a point in a decision where you're going to do something about it.
Yeah.
So even when I had my initial, all right, fuck it, I'm going to do something about it kind of decision, I had actually tried to quit drinking completely and just said, you know what, I'm going to turn it off, I'm going to shut it down. And I physically wasn't able. Like I was having pretty bad DTs um, and you know, visibly shaken like I was an epileptic or something, right? And ultimately had to go back to drinking to be able to just not have a medical problem, basically. Um, Luckily, I still had it in my mind to do it, and kind of weaned myself off to a certain degree before I had just, you know, a big blow up. I blew up in anger at a guy who was working with me that I'd known for 20 years for something that I really shouldn't have blown up about. But I went up so far off the deep end that, you know, my wife at the time called me on it and told me I'd went too far, and I had several other people told me that I'd went too far, and um, just, you know, ruined a 20 plus year friendship over just something really, really petty, right? And so having everybody call me out on being an asshole really made me look at a lot of things, and and um, and I finally made the decision to literally that day just be completely done with alcohol. Um, and for me, it was not really a challenging decision. I think the days preceding that were more challenging than the decision itself, right? But but it's been probably one of the best decisions I've made in my lifetime.
Yeah, I really want to hone in on this because I spoke in front of a group of people about a month and a half ago, and this conversation about vices and alcohol came up, and in the conversation, there's a Q&A afterward, and the guy asked an honest question. He's in his probably early 40s, and he's like, Albert, is there a balance between drinking and not drinking? And I looked right at him, and I said, can I be honest with you? He goes, yeah. I go, you're bullshitting yourself in front of a bunch of people. And he looked at me, I go, let me explain myself. It's not that maybe you can handle it, okay? But I'm talking about collectively. I was talking to everybody at this time. Has alcohol been positive or negative collectively to the earth? And there was a resounding, it hasn't been positive. It's been negative. I said, so if you take that collective energy of what alcohol has done and you break that down, some of you may have responded better than others. But collectively, it's ruined life. It's ruined my family's life. It almost ruined my life. Like, I'm a great testament, but I'm just one of these threads. You're a testament. And so as I'm talking to people about this, it's not so much, and I've indoctrinated my kids on how to drink. Now, again, people could argue me back and forth, good or not good. Again, you may be able to handle it, but we don't know who in your family is not going to be able to. I have several people in my family that I personally know, they have one sip of alcohol and they completely change. And specifically men have this regret. I hear it over and over and over and over where, yes, girls want to have fun, go for it. I can't stop you. But men, we have to be so safe and secure with our families and people that when we start drinking and we can't handle it, I can't tell you how many regret stories of people get thrown in jail, killing people, killing themselves, personal people that I know, or hurting people that they know because it's not a disease to me. It's a habit. It's a habit, and it's something that they're hiding. So that being said, for you, you made massive changes. You decided to change your life. Since being on this other side, what has been the biggest aha moment for you now that you are sober and living this life without a substance to inebriate you?
Man, I think the biggest thing for me has been I never realized how at peace I was.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I have a degree of peace now that is quite frankly far beyond what I've ever had in my life up until this point. And I think some of that is like knowing how stormy the sea can get, being able to appreciate the sunset, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, because at the end of the day, I don't think I could have the degree of peace that I do now and like I call it being unfuckwithable, right? Because it's like nothing can shake me internally or externally because I've already been through it.
Yeah.
I've already seen the deepest, darkest reaches in both my own soul, right, and consequently externally as well from some of the decisions that I've made with drinking in my life and shit, not just drinking, other drugs and stuff like that too, to be honest. But again, having seen that and then being where I'm at now, where I can move different in my life, right? I've built the skills and the mental fortitude to sit and do things that to other people might seem super daunting, but you know, you can be unshakable and really immovable in a way when you have a certain degree of peace, right? And it's like, that's not to say that there aren't moments where, you know, I'm an emotional person, right? Like I could be overwhelmed with emotion and still have peace, but I don't let that control me or guide my decision making in a way that it did before, for sure, right? Like it's not a reaction. It's just a piece of the process.
Yeah, there's something that's really powerful too in yourself when you realize that you're so in control of what the one person in your life, and that's you. And like everyone, I think the biggest thing too, it's gonna be part of my question as well too. It seems like everyone else around you almost becomes more calm, you know. And even if it's true or not, it just feels like since like if I'm able to be consistent with certain like with meditating or journaling or working out, it's almost like I can be so calm and be on this certain wavelength that everything else around me feels like they want to either be a part of it or I can just naturally attract and repulse certain things, and everything else feels so simpler, you know. And so I guess part of my question now is like after understanding how powerful it is for you to have like this unshakable faith in yourself, how are your relationships, your really close personal relationships and then like business relationships after realizing that you were in control of this habit?
Yeah. Um, Twofold answer, really. Some relationships were really shook up and were really turned on their head because they were all based off of kind of trauma bonding type of stuff and just, you know, what I would almost call a sick part of me loving a sick part of them, right? And having this type of attachment that isn't that only serves to feed a certain negative aspect. And I think a lot of people are in a relationship due to that, and don't necessarily realize it because we don't often take the chance to, number one, observe ourselves. We typically look at our partner, right, or whoever it is else in the relationship as what they're doing in a relationship. Even so with our kids or anything like that. But I think also that we don't look at the relationship as one thing too, right? Like it's got its own life and dynamic of interacting with these relationships. So again, first part of it is a lot of relationships got shook up, turned on their head that were unhealthy relationships. And I even found myself kind of falling back into that in certain aspects of these unhealthy things, catching myself and then re-arcing to go to a healthy route. But then, you know, on the other side of that, I think you really see who will rally for you too. And I think you see who the true caring people are, and who, for me, it was who the true caring people are and who wanted me for what I could do for. Because I came from a very, you know, especially running the businesses that I had and them being service-based industries, it's always, what can I do for you? You know what I mean? And that that got taken a little bit far, I think, in my personal relationships, whereas my business relationships understood that me setting my boundaries was only really serving them ultimately, because I was a stronger thing that they could rely
Yeah. Yeah, man, I love that, and I wanted to expand on that a little bit about relationships. You're a father of 3, correct?
on. Yep.
Is that correct? So tell me, tell us how that's evolved over the years. You had a great story about finding out that you were a father at one point, and how did that play into the stress of life, and then later in sobriety? Give us a little bit of synopsis of that journey, and just how it's affected fatherhood over the years, on now where you're at in life, being a sober man.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did my first son is my ex's son. I'd raised him since he was 5, right? He's 23 now. And he and I have gone through a lot. He's receives disability for his autism. He's pretty low functioning on the autism scale as far as especially behavior and social interaction. So, battling through with a autistic son with puberty was definitely probably one of the most challenging 2 years of my life, I'll say. Even physically, like there's a lot of, him trying to self-harm and attacking his mom and stuff like that. So at the time, I'm a traveling sales rep, so I may drive 300, 400 miles a day, come home to, my 6'1" son trying to beat my wife's ass type shit, and have to deal with that, right? And then go back out at 5 o'clock in the morning, do the same thing, come back home. Again, 2 years of that. So, some of that stuff obviously really challenging, trying to build a business, trying to keep a household together, and then finding out about Dominic even before that was like, interestingly enough, I'd moved away to sober up at that time. I got a call one day, and long story short, found out he was my son at 18 months old, and worked very hard to have him in my life, and spent 11 years driving back and forth every other weekend to get him a 7-hour round trip each time, right? And so uh, our relationship actually grew because of that, I think, in a lot of ways, because of not only the time spent, but it's really hard to, I think, even on his side, and he would agree, it's really hard to say that I don't care for him or don't see him as important with that kind of sacrifice, right? Although it's probably not the ideal, white picket fence type of situation, I think that per even the title of the podcast, right, controlling your destiny, and some of the decisions that I made really, really benefited him to know that there was somebody in his corner like that, even through all this darkness that I'm going through, right, at the time. So, and give you a little snapshot in time. It's like at one point I got one autistic son in puberty battling. I got one I'm driving back and forth for every other weekend, 7-hour round trip. I got 16 employees at a freight brokerage that I'm running, and a pregnant wife. And so, you know what I mean? Like, talk about stress on you, man. Like, it'll weigh on anybody when you got that amount on you, right? And a lot of other people that their families are relying on you too. And so, again, you get in this place in your head, I think, and I think everybody finds themselves at some point with this imposter syndrome. Like, damn, how am I going to handle all this? Am I good enough? Do I deserve this? Right? Like all this other kind of stuff that comes from this wounding, and And for me, filling that wound with alcohol,
Yeah.
quite frankly, just let it fester more until it blew up in an angry rage. And it did pretty often, you know. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a lot to put on your plate too. It seems like when I hear you talk about that, I don't know. I'm just thinking as like a young father trying to understand what it really means to like connect with your son during that portion of time, and then you talking about like your son who has autism as well. Did you know like during that time frame when you were a father and trying to provide for everyone, just for someone that does aspire to become a father one day? Um, how would you like? How do you think you were able to like grow with your family during this time frame as like wanting to provide, making sure you're there for them, and then also like supporting yourself too during that?
Well, that was a lot of the problem is I wasn't supporting myself. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And the work and the additional things I was doing was just as much escapism as the alcohol for me, because I did have such an imposter syndrome of, it's kind of like feeling like all you can do to be the best dad that you can, but hating yourself for what you didn't do at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
And it's this just shitty cycle that you find yourself mentally caught in sometimes as a parent, that you know, you want to do the be by them, and you always second guess yourself, right? Because you think you could do better. At the end of the day, you're going to do what you're going to do, and they're going to be their own person anyway, right? And the blame portion of that is the sickness. I think the blame and the shame is the sickness there, not, as you say, the alcoholism, right? And I know you talk about alcoholism as a habit, and I agree with that, because that habit is built on the same type of habit of thinking about how we think about ourselves, about how we position ourselves in our own mind, in whatever position we see ourselves as, right? So in my case, it's like I see myself as the dad and the father and the husband, and I wear this, I'm going to call it a liar's crown, right? Proudly thinking, yes, I am all those things, but then, you know, again, hiding in the garage, drinking a bottle of whiskey to be worried about how I'm not living up to those things and those positions that I've built for myself.
Yeah, man. So I'm going to be really real with you, man. I'm super triggered right now. I'm going to tell you why. I just realized your story. So Albert, what you're going to realize at some point in time is you're going to be a dad. And what I've recognized is all dads, I'm generalizing, but most dads are dealing with what Josh has dealt with, because I dealt with. So here, let me tell you what's going through my mind right now. When I was married to your mom, I rarely drank in front of her. Matter of fact, she would, whenever I would sip whiskey, she's like, "What are you doing?" Like, she would call me out. She's like, and so I didn't, because my dad would do that. He would sneak. But you know what my vice was, and you know what my habit was? It was eating. I thought about this. The last 4 years of our marriage, dude, I'm sharing this online so you guys know what I'm going through, is it wasn't alcohol that was my addiction. It was food. I would literally go to Taco Bell every day and buy 2 tacos and a burrito. And I'd go to fucking the grocery store and buy 2 packages of Mounds chocolate. I did that every day before I came home for a long time. But here's the deal. I would park 3 blocks down the street, and I would sit in my car and eat before I went home, because the stress I was feeling at the time, maybe the last 2 years, was so overwhelming that I had to fill myself with this pleasure of food so I could be capacitated in a way where I could calm my nerves down. I just thought about it right now, Josh. It's just amazing. I haven't thought about that thought in fucking 13 years, because
Yeah,
my
man.
body alcohol didn't really come into play until I met with Michelle, Albert. So there's two different vices. That alcohol was part of it, but I also recognized food was part of it. So why I'm bringing this up is Josh, is what I found with addicts is they will replace one addiction for another, right? There's a joke with crackheads. They replace a spoon to a fork.
Yeah.
So, and for me, when I adjusted my energy to not drink, people ask me, what did you do for me? Well, I created new habits. I created the habit of, instead of drinking, I would drop down and do push-ups, or I'd go to the gym. I go to the gym 2 to 3 times a day now. I read content throughout. So I've changed. I've pivoted. I call it the pivot. I've pivoted. The energy. Energy's still there. People think the energy's still there. We have to pivot the energy to make it do something else. So for you, Josh, what was the pivot that you made in your life to replace alcohol?
Yeah, so that's a good one, because I tripped with this too, and did the food thing as well, right? And I mean, I lost a bunch of weight there shortly after drinking, like 70 or 80 pounds, because quite frankly, I was just drinking so much.
Yeah.
But then I found myself slipping probably a year ago into food and gained some of that weight back. What I found for me really works to pivot into is, you got to understand, man, when I had all these employees and stuff, I had everything delegated. Like, I didn't mow my lawn, I didn't do my laundry, I barely cooked for myself, right? And that makes me sound really snooty and stuff, but at the end of the day, I was just so damn busy that, like, I mean, I was working 15, 16, 17 hours a day, literally 6 days out of the week, right? And drinking a whole bottle of whiskey, getting up and doing it again the next morning. Like, really just going hard on myself. So, for me, it was getting out to do simple things again. Like, I have a habit around going for a walk every day. I wash all my own dishes and change all my own car parts for the most part, unless it's just something I absolutely can't do. I do these really rudimentary things, and some of it goes back to what I taught salespeople as well, and people when I ran companies. It's like everybody gets caught up on hierarchy and all these other things, and I would joke with people that at the end of the day, I don't care if you call me the head toilet scrubber, I'm still going to do all the same shit I do every day, right? And so my habit became doing those very, very simple tasks that I'd otherwise delegated before, to just, quite frankly, occupy my hands so that I didn't want to go for a drink, so that I didn't get locked into something else, right? Because at least I could, even if I hated doing something, and I fucking absolutely hate doing the dishes. It's the worst one for me. But even if I hate doing it, I can focus on that feeling more than, and that's healthier than going into this fixation mode that we can get when we're, wanting to get locked up with substances, right?
Yeah.
And so, like you said, man, the thing's still there. Like, mentally, that trigger thing, that implement and that path you can go down for the fixation. Yeah. You just got to figure out how to direct it, control it, to point it in the direction that you want to go in your life, because it's really a fucking superpower at the end of the day. Because you can go harder, faster, and stronger than most people, because you can reference back those times when, like you said, a crackhead going to a fork. Who's going to beat a crackhead from working at the end of the day? If they want crack that day, they're going to go out and work, right? So if you can direct that same type of energy towards your goals and orient it towards what you want to accomplish to grow, you've just literally taken charge of your own destiny.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
Yeah, I think it's funny too. I was researching a lot about the 7 deadly sins last week, right before, and it just got me thinking about, well, one, how easy it is to just bounce from each one, and how they're all related, though. Kind of like we're talking about the fork right now. We're talking about like gluttony. We're talking about like greed. You know, if you want to use it towards building your wealth, and that's the only thing you care about. And I think what I'm realizing now, and just assessing the small vices that I'm slowly integrating, just disintegrating. It doesn't go away ever. Like that feeling of wanting to like scratch that itch. I think what I'm hearing from you right now is you got to just find what's most beneficial for you, right? And being a successful business owner like you are, it's going to be there no matter what, because it's way easier to do that stuff than it is to not want to, you know, since it's so like you're so successful that that's so second nature. But the hard part is still going to be like getting that off your mind, you know. So I don't know. It's just fascinating to hear just you two talk about it, where it's you guys are almost twice my age, you know, but it's still you're still going through the same stuff as you were 10, 15 years ago. It's just shifted now.
You just got to train yourself. You know, if you spend the time to get to know yourself, I think you can know the deep, deep, dark crevices that your brain has got and paths that it'll send you down, right? And having that knowledge and then executing on that knowledge will, to me, it's hacking yourself, right? It's like figuring out where you can do the best with what you have, and I believe that's what we're here to do anyway. The best with what we have, and the best for each other. And I also want to say, like, you know, I know we talk about a lot of this in the light perspective of struggle, and like these are things to overcome and stuff like that. But you know, I mean, I did a lot of good during all these times too, right? Even though I was doing bad for myself, it's like I was out there helping other people, even in my brokenness, because of my brokenness, right? It's like, so, you know, when you don't want to see, when you've hurt, you don't want to see other people hurt, right? And so, you know, I think there's a somewhat of a cycle almost that happens between hurt and love, just like any other kind of ecosystem, right? Like a heart that hurts can love more, just as a person who's been down a dark road has the capacity to have empathy, like people who weren't down that dark path may not have.
Yeah, man, that's a great analogy. You know, I always thought about fear and love. Fear and love has the same amount of energy. One just repels and the other one embraces.
Yep.
And I think where a lot of folks, you know, and Albert, I'm really glad you're on this show with us today too, because one of the things that's been powerful for Albert and I is he can experience other people. He's 26 years old. You have a 26-year-old too, Josh. It's like to see this young man who is in his power, like getting knowledge and hearing real life information, and he's getting to know me. I'm his father, but I'm still I'm still a fucked up dude here and there, and I'm still struggling every day. Like, and so that becomes real. And for me, you know, this love-fear relationship has been a toggle for most of my life. And you know, we got about maybe 10, 15 minutes left, Josh. You know, for you, what are some struggles that you still kind of toggle with on a daily basis that you're still trying to figure out and or makes you human?
Yeah. The worthiness issues are a motherfucker, I'll tell you. You know, and mine go deep seated from, you know, coming from a military family. I spent a lot of time trying to fit in, right?
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in a new place, being a new kid, trying to, like, you know, find my way and just find something, right? And so that led me to a lot of cool things in my life, but it also led me to a lot of really shitty things in my life that I accepted. So, you know, worthiness and boundaries therein kind of hand in hand go. And then look, man, I think there comes a point, especially going back to this unfuckwithable, that you just got to like roll with a punch almost. And, you know, financially being an entrepreneur, I, I love the way that Royce to 5'9" puts it. He says, I've been up and I've been down and I don't give a fuck. It's like, I had to get to a point where the number in my bank account didn't have anything to do with my actual worth, right? Because, you know, I've been in positions where late on the bills and negative bank account, and, you know, shut off notices and just shit stacking up against you, backed in a corner and made one deal. All that shit went away and we went right back to building, right? And I think that can happen, especially depending on what skills you build out, right? But it can happen for most people, you know, and it doesn't look like the publisher's clearinghouse just all of a sudden dropping. It looks like years of work. It looks like pushing in the same direction with no results. And then all of a sudden, like I literally just got a $3 million contract somebody offered me, you know what I mean? Because of something that I've been doing for about 2 years now that they saw and came to me to offer me a contract, right? And it was a godsend financially here, you know, and I mean, this is a very recent thing still going. Like, I don't even want to say who it is. It's like that fresh, right? But it's like, you know, that portion of having faith that you can keep going and that faith in yourself, dude, I think anybody who especially goes down the path of entrepreneurship is going to find that place where they're like, oh, fuck, man, what was I thinking trying to build this parachute jumping out of this plane? Like what kind of idiot am I? And, you know, you get really, really negative at some point in it. And then it's a big release whenever it happens. Mm-hmm. And then you gain a validation of keeping a promise to yourself at that I think makes all that struggle worth it. You know what I mean? And so, like, I think that's the funnest struggle, but it's also, boy, it gets hairy down there too, right? Like, your entrepreneurship, I had a friend of mine say the other day that entrepreneurship is the best life growth hack you'll ever experience, because it's damn sure going to test your character.
Amen to that.
Yeah, there's no other place like it. It's it'll show you what faith really means too, I think.
Yeah. First-hand knowledge, ain't nothing like it, right?
So, me and my dad like to ask this question too. What questions do you have for us after kind of being in this experience? Is there something that you want to either get to know about you and your son, or just based off of our conversation so far, what comes to mind?
Yeah, man, you know, I after reading your dad's book, which was pretty challenging for me to get through, I don't know if he shared that with you, but I got emotional several times throughout, and like literally crying tears on the page, just really being triggered a couple different times in reading his book. And some of that really touched me in particular was his experience going through the desert on a bum foot, right? Like, and I don't know if I'm spoiling the book here or whatever, but you know, like, how did that make you look at your dad and like what was your take on him doing that to himself, is the way that I want to word it, right? Like, did you just think, holy shit, what is dad doing? He lost his fucking mind going to the desert to hobble around, or like? Yeah,
so this is 2020, so the pandemic was happening, you know. He'd kind of been on his journey to really look at himself a little bit more, because that year, it was the year before, it was pretty rocky. But so he'd been talking a lot about wanting to change for a while, and I think we'd slowly been seeing change, like with I would say we as a family. And so for me personally, once I saw him like decide to do something like that, I had no idea what he was really getting himself into. You know, I was curious about it, but it was just something you never heard about. You know, just take out the boot for a second and broken leg, but it was like because that was right before. So I don't even think I don't remember if I knew that he broke his leg. Yeah, I don't think I knew because it was like the week before, if I remember correctly, or maybe a week and a half. So he talked about it.
Can I interject real quick?
Yeah.
So here's what you need to know, Josh, and he's not telling you, I'm going to tell you. None of them were talking to me. They were all pissed off at me. Okay. So no one knew what I was doing because of COVID, but we were down the family was in this really dire straits because Albert was doing his own thing. He didn't want to be around me or Sacramento or the people. He didn't want to be around me or just the environment. His mom and I were not getting along. My daughter wasn't talking to me. So during that time, no one really knew what I was doing. So I don't think he, if I'm talking for you, Albert, knew about the broken leg really piece of the book until you read the book or you and I started talking more down the road. It wasn't important because they weren't a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I knew we slowly wanted to because that's when Brielle was born too. She was pregnant.
That's right. Yeah.
So it was like kind of crystallizing, but like it was like still like trying to jam two Lego pieces that don't go together. You know, it's like they can go somehow, but we don't know how to do it. But yeah, I didn't even know his leg was broken. I don't think until afterwards, because COVID was going on and it was just coming out of it. And I think I saw him and was like, "What the fuck is going on?" Like like I saw you in August and now in November you have a broken leg. So I didn't even realize anything until after it happened. So I was like mostly just like, oh wow, you went through that too, and you just broke your leg. So yeah, it was more the aftershock. You know, it's kind of like the earthquake, and you don't really. Sometimes the biggest waves are from afterwards, and just hearing a story more and more from there, it opened my eyes because I was wanting to shake up my career. I guess we weren't really talking. Now I'm thinking about it. Yeah, no, we weren't. And so like I was still trying to figure out what I was trying to do. I was graduating college that year, wanting to do my own thing. So it was more of like, yeah, I see you're doing it, cool. And then the next year we started talking a little bit more, and I was more curious then, because I didn't realize the magnitude of what it was of him wanting to go through something like that and just be by yourself for 4 days, you know? So it really didn't hit me until honestly 2 years afterwards when I decided that I wanted to like go on my own personal journey, and I started dissecting it a little bit more, because me and him reconciled throughout that life. So I honestly got to know more of it probably almost 2 years after it happened, and saw that he was going to be consistent, you know, because with parents, I think you have to earn they have to earn our trust a little bit more, you know, if they've broken that relationship for a while, because those scars are really hard to heal.
Yeah,
Great. And so just I don't know if you caught that, Josh, but Albert did the desert journey in 2022. He did that same journey.
Yeah. Okay.
And 2023. I was like,
Yeah.
2023. I'm 2023.
Yeah.
So what's unique about this, as you brought that question up, is, you know, one of the things that Albert and I I discovered, once him and I reconciled, and I was able to be a part of the journey that he was at the desert, same desert, different time of year. I knew there was an experience that I had, and there was an experience that he had. And so I remember talking to his mom. His mom called me, or I called her. I go, "Hey, do you want to know what Albert's doing?" She's like, "Is he going to die?" I go, "He's not going to die. I'm alive." She's like, "I don't care about you, but I want to know my son. Is my son going to die?" Your son's going to be okay, but I want to caution you. He's going to come back a different man. And she's like, "Well, what do you mean?" I just said, the whole journey is about a self-discovery journey. I explained a little bit. He's going to fast for 4.5 days. And And so for me, it was an emotional experience for me because I just knew what he was going to go through.
Yeah.
And I knew what I went through. Even though our experiences were completely different, it's the camaraderie, it's the spirituality, it's the whole, it's an elite select, not elite, it's a select group of individuals who have made a stand for themselves. Just like you and I, Josh, are in the same, I view you at a high regard because of what I know what you're going through. So there was this instantaneous bond, I guess you could say, between us that has led us to where we are today.
Awesome. Yeah, I know how, especially my 16-year-old, with some of the stuff I've gotten into, he's like, man, how do you get into that shit? like you're always on some crazy shit, you know? Like, and I think some of that is that bond that brings us together too, right? It's like, you know, look, some of my fondest memories of especially my son Dominic, my middle child. He's a musical genius and all this, but you know, I got him into early '90s and 2000 hip hop, right? And so we'd have these like really in depth conversations about early in depth hip hop, right? And like that's something that he and I connect on a pretty deep level, believe it or not. As superficial as hip hop can be, it's like we know a lot of the lore and know some of those people personally and stuff like that too. That makes it really an interesting thing for our dynamic. So I feel like you guys have a similar dynamic with this deeper spiritual experience that you're going through too, or that you have gone through rather. And that's really neat that you guys have done that.
Thank you. Yeah, we got about 6-7 minutes, man. Is there anything else you wanted to indulge in or talk about, or or questions for us before we wrap things up?
Man, I just, like I said, I think it's super important what you're doing to leaving a safe space and an open space for men to come on and be vulnerable, especially men like us that have overcome a lot of these things, right? Like, one of the things that I didn't really go into, but, shortly after I found out about my son, I had a major lung surgery and was given a 20% chance to live out of it, right? So I literally told the doctor at one point, after he told me that I had a 20% chance to live through the surgery, I said, you see that guy over there? He and I got a whole lot of living left to do. And so, I think that fatherhood and some of the challenges that come with it is, as entrepreneurship, is some of the biggest character building things that we can do, right? And it really shows you, I think, what you're willing to sacrifice. And I think that that's different for everybody, what you're willing to sacrifice. But I think that the rewards after and the relationships that we get in a father and son relationship are the biggest reward out of any sacrifice we can make.
Yeah, I agree with you, man, and I love that. I just, what's interesting is I've been talking to my son about this a lot. He's been hearing is like, I didn't really grow up until probably about 5 years ago. Like, I didn't really know what fatherhood was. I was a really good father, but I fathered how I wasn't fathered. But what I've learned through fatherhood is there's a reason why you have a mom and a dad, a male and a female, and with a lot of single moms out there, single moms can't teach young men how to be men. Only men can teach how to be men.
Yep.
And the reason why moms are important, like for me, moms are the gate key for nurturing. I never got nurtured. So mom's role from 0 to 5 or 6 or 7 is to be that nurturing person, to be that protector, to make sure that nest is taken care of. But there's a point in time where there's going to be a handoff. And that handoff is between 9, 10, 11, and 12, when there needs to be a man who can lead and say, no, you need to go learn this, and teach them about what it is for growth, what it is to fail. Because men by nature we're designed to fix shit. We're designed to fail and to grow and to fail and to grow and to fail and to grow. That's what we get off on that. We want to feel capable. We want to feel appreciated. And so that being said, what I just really love what you brought today, Josh, and thank you so much for coming on, is you brought that piece. I saw a lot of you today that I didn't, and just as we're leading up to this, of how you were able to lead your family, right? Choose your destiny. That's what you did. You decided as a man at some point in time that what was serving you is no longer serving you anymore. The alcohol, the defeatistness, the self-sabotage, all the things you're running from, it no longer served you. So you made a decision to say, I'm not going to be that person. I'm going to pivot because my life, my kids are, and my legacy is important to me. So I just want to just make sure I honor you, man. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot from your story, and it made me also really determined again of why I'm here. My purpose is really to be that beacon of light for other men who are struggling. I posted it today. We have 2 assignments in this world. It's to heal ourselves and teach others how to heal themselves as well. That's our assignment, is figure out what the fuck's going on with us. And then once we figure out an equation, help someone else figure out their equation. So I just want to take the time, man, again for coming on and sharing your struggles and sharing your love and sharing what you've overcome.
I appreciate you guys, and thanks for having a platform where guys like me can share,
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate you. That's Josh Perry, everyone. This is Choose Your Destiny, the Legacy Project, episode 42, man. Your story is really incredible, especially as a young man, as an entrepreneur who's an aspiring entrepreneur, and just really taking ownership of what it means, of your downfall, you know, and becoming aware and getting out of that funk is super critical. We see all the time how easy it is for men to just spiral down and do something about it when they spiral down for the negative, and have some negative consequences. But you're willing to turn it up a notch and be there for your family, for your businesses, and be in service, and recognize that it takes you to really turn the tide. So thank you so much today, and we appreciate it. And with that, everyone, we are signing off here at the Legacy Project with Albert and Albert. And thank you so much, Josh Perry, for joining us today. And we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks.